Nicko here. Well, I'm not actually. I'm just giving you mumbo jumbo so it can waste time and spend all your money on this phone call. If you want to leave a number and a name and all that good stuff, I might get back to you. Because you know metal sticks, which is all very good and well, so leave me a name and number. Bye-bye.
Metal fans, are you ready? Welcome to
Metal Sticks!
the show you've been waiting for. We celebrate heavy metal. Across our episodes, we're unleashing interviews with icons. Our Roll with Nicko, a deep dive into the stories behind each snare in Nicko's collection, as well as other Iron Maiden memorabilia. And to wrap it all up, Wear, Tear, and Care, where Nicko shares his tips to keep your drums sounding and working at their best. Modern drummer. I'm David Frangioni.
I am Nicko McBrain.
We are Metal Sticks. And today we have an incredible guest. We're so excited for you guys to see this interview. The one and only Steve Vai.
Yes. Thank you for joining us here on our podcast, Metal Sticks. How you been, mate? You good?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I just got off tour with Satriani, and we did Europe, and it was great. And I'm taking 2 weeks with the family in a lovely resort, and that's where I am right now.
Did you go to Japan for a little bit?
I head to Japan in a week and a half with Beat. That's the band with Adrian Belew, Tony Levin, and Danny Carey, and we play the '80s King Crimson music.
Oh my goodness, that's gonna be a hoot, mate. That's gonna, especially with Danny. Oh my lord.
Oh, yeah, I remember when the Bill Bruford auction was happening. Danny and I finally figured out that we were bidding in all of these other auctions for really cool gear. So we connected on it, and we're like, all right, what are you going to bid on and what am I going to bid on? So let's not bid it up, because we were the guys driving all these prices up, the two of us. So we put our heads together, and when the Bruford auction happened, it was like we were coordinated, and he'd be like, no, I really want this one. I'm like, all right, get it. I'm not going any further. So it would like normalized what the prices were, but that's how much of Bruford heads that we are. And,
Fantastic.
and so that's
Danny
just
told
incredible.
me a bit about that and some of the gear he got. I didn't know that you had a little partnership there. It was probably very wise. But Danny loves collecting. So he has a great collection of a lot of different kinds of things.
When you first started to play, you actually had guitar lessons from Joe, Mr. Satriani.
Interesting story. I grew up in this little town on Long Island called Carl Place. And Joe was in the same town. And we went to the same school and hung out in all the same places, but he was like a generation older than me. So when I was like 12, he was like 16. And I always admired the guitar ever since I was about 8 years old, and I saw this kid playing it in my school. But I never had the courage to pick it up until I heard Led Zeppelin when I was 12. And I went to a friend's house, John Sergio, just two doors down, and he had a guitar and he was actually playing it, and I was stunned, and he said, well, you should see my teacher, Joe Satriani. Joe was always great. He was teaching a lot of us in the town, and he was always cool. He was the best teacher and mentor, and I took lessons from him for like 3 or 4 years, kind of on and off, because he was going in and out of town. Which is just quite remarkable, because then after that, we launched our careers and jumped into the world and have, both enjoyed wonderful success in our fields and have toured together and played together and recorded together. It's really great.
And you've just finished a tour with him. How many dates did you get on that tour?
I think we only did about 34 shows on this tour. And but this was the first time Joe and I actually toured in one band, because in the past we would tour as like G3, so there's 3 separate bands, or we'd tour, Satriani and Vai, but we'd have 2 bands. And this time it was really great because we started writing music together and we released a couple of tracks, and we're going to finish the record this year for a next year release. And kicking off this tour, was nice because it was a consolidated band. You know, we'd both come out and do a few songs, then I'd do a few, and then he'd come out, I'd play with him on a track, and then he'd do a few, kind of like tag team, you know, back and forth.
Who was the rest of the guys in the band?
Marco
that you were playing
Mendoza
with?
on bass, Pete Thorne on guitar, and Kenny Aronoff on drums. And these guys are just, what a band. Just so fantastic, so professional. They just created such a bed, you know. And when we started it, we thought we probably shouldn't have any guys from our previous bands in this new band. But if you can get Kenny, you get him, you know.
Yeah.
So we got
Yeah.
Kenny, and
Don't
he
blame
is just such a pleasure to play with. I mean, as a drummer, he's just so. Besides being just a really great guy to tour with, which you know that's means a lot, you know, because if you're touring
Yeah,
with
of course,
unhappy
yeah.
people, the whole tour's, you know, can go south.
Well, it makes you,
You know,
well, it
can go
makes you
south.
miserable, doesn't it? You know, it kind of rubs off.
Yeah, and
you
and
know.
Kenny was just all the guys were just outstanding, but it was great to sit into Kenny's groove because he has this beautiful kind of ebb and flow, you know, and his tone is fantastic also when he hits, and he still hits really hard and just has a very nice flow to him. So it was a great band.
Marky Mendoza as well. It's a great bass player. But the other lad was Peter.
Yeah, Pete's unbelievable. I mean, what a find. He's been a very dutiful soldier in many huge tours as a, you know, a guitarist in the band. And what's so amazing about him, he comes into rehearsal and he knows all the parts, but his tones, you know, he really has a real overview and a handle on gear and how to create the right tones. And he always plays in tune, you know, and a real
Very
pleasure.
important.
Yeah, and Marco just creates such a nice fat round bed, you know. Is a great band, yeah.
Yeah, great rhythm. I mean, Kenny and Marco, you know, what a great rhythm section together, you know. Kenny's always had that real good power. You know, he keeps fit, doesn't he?
If you give him a big hug, it's like hugging a boulder filled with dynamite.
Watch out when he shakes your hand, Steve. You know.
Oh man, we love Kenny. Kenny, we have a great Modern Drummer Legends book with Kenny, and we've worked really closely with him for a long time. And what's extraordinary is he's such a chameleon, and he's done so many high profile like rock leaning gigs that you don't instantly think of him in the same sentences as you're thinking about like the real chops masters, you know, Vinny and Terry Bozzio, like guys that Steve had played with that like are like just super chops, right? But Kenny can play, he can hold it down with anybody. Like it's extraordinary. Like he's his own, the reason is just because he's done so much in the high profile world that's not chops based, playing on Belinda Carlisle, Heaven is a Place on Earth, like, you know, millions and millions of copies, and John Cougar and all these things. Now you see him with Steve Vai and Joe Satriani, and it's like for a second you go, wait a second, that can't be the same drummer.
Yeah,
But
same
it
guy.
is.
So said it. He's chameleon-esque. And you know what's interesting is I've had great good blessings when it comes to playing with really accomplished drummers. I mean, I played with Vinny quite a bit, and Terry, and you know, those guys like Vinny. I mean, they're stylistic in that they stamp what they do with their personal DNA. You know, like when you hear Vinny, just by even just the hit of a snare, you know, or just his groove, you know it's him. And it's kind of like the same thing with Terry. And they can, you know, obviously uh, move into any kind of a gig. But with someone like Kenny, he can authenticize any of the rock genres that he embraces. You know, he doesn't sort of come off sounding like his style, his personal style, is flowing over. whereas Vinny and Terry, God bless them. When you hear them in any format, you can kind of say that sounds like Vinny, that sounds like Terry. Uh, yeah, but with Kenny, he blends in transparently.
Now, I didn't realize until we were chatting about this that you and Steve played together.
Was that the guitar show in London that we did together, or the drum show? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it was either the guitar show or the drum show, but
Yeah.
it happened quick.
And Steve came in and he was listening to. I think, did you have like your iPhone or something? You were listening to the track. He learnt it like in the rehearsal room, and it was myself, Phil Hilborn, Andy Frost, and the Phil Hilborn band, basically.
Yeah, because I wasn't.
doing some work with.
I mean, I know the song. I knew the song, but I never put fingers on it. But it happened pretty quick, so I thought I better learn this. What a blast!
And we played it quick. Nothing changed there,
Yeah,
didn't it?
yeah, it's got tempo.
That was such a blast for me, Steve. And then of course when we played with Yngwie down here in Miami for I don't know which charity it was involved, and I was kindly invited to go and play with yourself and Yngwie and Rudy Salazar, I think was on
Yeah,
bass.
that was Yngwie's. It was sort of like a guitar charity he was setting up.
And you've done projects and tours with Yngwie.
Yeah, Yngwie and I met way back in the early '80s. Because he was in Alcatraz, and when he hit the scene, everybody freaked out. All the guitar players, all the input jacks on their guitars closed up. I was fascinated with him because my wife is Swedish. She's half Swedish, so I understand Swedish culture. And when Yngwie got here, he was very Swedish. So he would speak, and one of the aspects, attributes of Swedish people is they're very practical thinking. That they don't feel personally insulted when you're telling them what time it is. It's like they give out their thoughts and feelings without any filters, and it's very refreshing. But if you're not ready for it, it could sound a little over the top. And when Yngwie got here and he started doing press and stuff, he was just being his confident Swedish self. And, he got this reputation for being very arrogant and all this stuff. He was just very confident. But we got to know each other. We actually got pretty close. And through the years, we remained really good friends. And we toured together on G3. And then when I put Generation X together with Zach and Nuno and Tosin, I called Yngwie and he was all in. And we did a bunch of tours and it was great. I mean, if you know Yngwie, you love him. You really do. If you don't know him, you might think he's something different.
Yeah, so of course, when you were with Dave Lee Roth, we toured together for a few shows in America.
And how did that gig come about? How did you connect with David Lee Roth? Because I read a quote recently that said that you had like a premonition that the minute you heard he was looking for a guitar player, that you basically told your wife or someone close to you, that's going to be me. And the next thing you know, it is you.
Yeah, it's an odd kind of thing. I don't really have a lot of experience with premonitions and metaphysical type things, but you get a feeling about things sometimes. And when I had heard that he was looking for a guitar player, something just said, that's your gig, And next thing you know, the phone rang and it was Dave. I was recommended to Dave by Billy Sheehan, because at the time I was kind of like, I was new, and there was some things that I had released that had some crazy playing on it. So, and then I had that Crossroads movie. So, I was on Dave's radar, and as soon as we got together, it was a good thing. It felt right, and we did those 2 records and world tours, and that was an interesting experience. It was my first. I had toured with Frank Zappa before that, but touring with Zappa was more like you're a musician and your whole attention is on Frank the whole time. But when I started touring with Dave Roth, all of a sudden you're in arenas and you're, this rock star type stuff, and you have to learn how to emanate to a large group of people. And I learned that from being with Dave, and it was a great experience. Plus, it was the '80s. You remember them?
Yeah, just about. Yeah. The thing is, though, Dave is such a great front man. I mean, he had the audience eating out of his hand. He was that good at the way his persona was projected. It was sad that things didn't work out the way I would have thought they would have done for Van Halen, but then again, there's that part of his life now that there's history, turn a chapter. But that was great for you to. I was going to ask you, who was drumming with Frank was it Terry or Chad?
The first tour we did, it was Vinny.
Oh, Vinny was okay.
Yeah, the second and third tours I did was Chad Wackerman.
Okay, so Terry was
before my
Vinny.
time. Yeah.
Hot Rats was one of my favourite records when I was growing up. Am I correct in saying you first started transcribing stuff?
For some reason, when I was going to Berkeley, I was always interested in, the little black dots and music and transcribing, because to me it was just so fascinating that I could hear something and then write it down. And I started doing a lot of that. And then when I was 18, I got a hold of Frank and I sent him a tape and I sent him a transcription. And he wanted to try me out for the band, but when I told him I was 18, he said, forget it, But he did hire me to start transcribing. And for years, I transcribed so much stuff for Frank. And when I was 20, I joined the band. So I was very young.
And you would mail him and this is pre-internet by a lot. So how'd you get him the transcriptions as he's needing them? You would go out to LA, or you would like fax them or mail them, or what was the technology component to it, if there was one?
Well, we had cassettes. That was the best you could do,
Right,
so and I would just sit and listen over and over. So Frank, the first time I met him, it was in New York City, and I was then 19. And I had already started transcribing some things for him, and he would just say, do a transcription of this song and that song. But then when I met him, he gave me 2 cassettes, and they were filled with crazy guitar solos, him and Vinny. And he said, transcribe this, So I went to work transcribing all of Frank's guitars and Vinny's drums. So I got every little... if you hit the hi-hat open or you step on it or it's half open, or for some reason, I understand how to, notate all of that stuff. So I started doing those transcriptions for Frank. And then when I was 20 and I moved out to California, I joined the band, but I was still transcribing. And this is where he was having me do all of this other very intense stuff and some very simple stuff, because back then, in order to copyright a piece of music, you had to have a transcription, a simple transcription, and so you send it off to Washington. So I had to go through his entire catalog and make sure there was transcriptions for every song. And then he would have me do like real dense stuff. But it was great. I loved it. And it's great for your ears. I would have to write. I mean, I still have a mountain of scrap manuscript paper that's just, it looks like black pages, because it's all these just rough transcriptions of Frank's music. It's kind of crazy. Frank released a book with a lot of my very dense transcriptions in it. It's called the Frank Zappa Guitar Songbook. And it's got a lot of Vinny's drum parts too.
I'm a huge Zappa fan. I've followed your career, Steve, since Zappa, when you would be quote unquote first on the scene and publicly, everyone was aware of your playing, and of course that was with Zappa, and then following it through Alcatraz, David Lee Roth, Whitesnake, and just and all of your guitar projects. And the thing that's kind of strikes me the most, and our, Nicko and I, the vision behind this podcast was all about really talking about heavy metal and like that genre and hard rock. And the first thing I think a lot of people think of when they think Steve Vai, especially if they know your histories, they think Zappa, they think guitar god, Lane. But your heavy metal work and hard rock work is just unbelievable. And not only in the playing, of course, but just who you've played with, when you played with them. I saw the David Lee Roth Eat 'Em and Smile tour. The band was one of the best rock bands I've ever seen in my life, and I really have seen just about everybody except for, I never saw Zeppelin live, but I saw pretty much everybody else live that you would think of in the halos of great bands. Yeah, I've just been to a million shows, seen great bands, and that band was like, I mean, I was sitting there at the time. I was going to New England Conservatory, so I was super into like intricacies and just more chops leaning than melodies and those kinds of things in that moment of my life. And this band had it all. Like you could sing along with the songs, and then you would sit there and watch Elephant Gun or Shy Boy and like these riffs that are just like, what the hell was like you don't see that at a rock show. So let's just talk about, because I know Jimmy Page was a huge influence of yours. Let's talk about metal and like your life in metal that a lot of people probably don't stop to really think about, but it's incredible.
Yeah, it's an odd kind of a thing, because when I was very young, I wanted to be a composer. I wanted to understand how to write, and I learned that. I learned that very young. But then when I was like 12 and I was being influenced by the music coming into the house. So my sister was getting like Alice Cooper and, Kiss and Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple and Queen. So that energy that's in metal was paramount. I was drawn to it. And on the other hand, I had all this quirky kind of musical sensibilities and oddballness, and my brain mixed it together. But it was definitely the energy and the intensity of heavy metal that had no real substitute. Maybe other things that I really like are like beautiful melody. I love playing long, beautiful melodies, songs on the guitar. But yeah, I mean, I was a Black Sabbath head, as a teenager, and I was always drawn to the metal that was available at the time. And of course, your band and all was, for me, more in the 80s. And once I got into the 80s, the whole scene changed. The 80s metal was, there was two types. There was the English British type, and a lot of integrity to the metal, whereas a lot of the American pop 80s metal bands were more colorful, sort of more circus-like, and our shows were like, just complete over the top rock indulgence, so we'd have the almost glamish, there was that kind of thing, and Roth kind of navigated more to like almost a glammy kind of a circus kind of a show, and it was great because get to wear all these crazy clothes, you get a stage the size of a football field, and you're running as fast as you can, and you look, you do crazy things, but we played our asses off. That was one of the things that, like Billy and I and Greg just, we were interested in shredding. At the time, shredding was becoming popular, and I was one of those guys that just practiced a lot. I loved playing slow, but I loved shredding. And Billy and I would just put together these wild kinds of duets with all this kinds of shredding, all in spandex pants,
And don't forget the guitar spin, because I don't know, I had never seen you do that before. I don't know if you had, but I first saw it when you were with DLR, and you're taking the guitar and it's going, literally 360, and it looks cool.
Yeah.
And a big.
I had a guitar made shaped like a big giant red heart with three necks coming out of it. I mean, it's very campy stuff.
Yeah. Tell us about your moving over to your Ibanez. You're still with them, right? You still play their guitars, and you designed. Yeah, you designed your own guitar with them. Was it a 7-string guitar originally?
Yeah, no, originally, I was a teenager in the 70s, and I loved Strats and Les Pauls. But there was something about them that was very limiting. I loved Strats because they had a whammy bar, but they weren't really, I know I'll get in trouble for this, but they weren't heavy metal instruments to me. They didn't have to me, the single coil pickups never really seemed to deliver the rock tone that I wanted. So, and Les Pauls were great. They had the rock tone, but they didn't have a whammy bar, and I didn't like the way they sat. And then once I started working for Zappa, I noticed that he was very irreverent about guitars. Like he would drill into them. He would put different pickups. He had a Jimi Hendrix Strat that Jimmy burned in, I think it was Miami. And, the first thing he did was rip the pickups out and put all these electronics in it. I mean, I was like, wow. So I realized then that, you don't have to be limited. So I went to this little guitar shop and I designed this guitar. And it was really just an innocent kind of desires. Like, can you make me a guitar? I want 24 frets, which was different for Strat style guitars at that time. Nobody had them. And I wanted the cutaway so my hand could fit. I could never understand why these guitars like Strats and Les Pauls have these little cutaways and you can't get to the high frets. And then I wanted the pickup configuration a particular way that was actually unique at the time. And the whammy bar, I wanted to be able to pull way, way, way up on it. And no guitars could do that. So I just took a look at the tailpiece and I realized, well, it's not going up because this wood is in the way. So I banged out the wood. And next thing you know, woo, woo. And that was the beginning of real floating tremolos. And, virtually every guitar that has a Floyd Rose type locking system now, has that cavity so you can really bend up. So this was a very innocent thing. And at the time I was picking up touring with Dave and I needed quality instruments and I only had 4 of these made. And all the guitar companies at the time, were obviously interested in having you play their guitars. And I said, well, I play this one. Whoever makes me the best one, that's who I'll work with. And nobody delivered even remotely close to what I wanted, not even Ibanez, until finally I said, no, this is what I want. Make this, And they made that guitar and that became the gem. And Ibanez was the only ones that could really pull it off. And they did it beautifully. And we've had this amazing relationship for close to 40 years. And then after that, maybe 5 years after that or 6, then the 7-string kicked in. And the 7-string was really just, I said to Ibanez, make me a gem, which is my model, with a 7th string. And they did. And, I didn't realize at the time that it was going to create a whole subculture. But that's turned to be wildly successful. I mean, I've just in the music business, I've lived a charmed life.
You're a charming man, and your talent is undeniable, Steve. You're brilliant, and it's just a pleasure to be able to speak to you and get a little bit of that insight. I mean, to me as a drummer, to understand that you have your gem guitar and you have then it went into a 7-string, which is how did you find playing from 6 to 7? Was it the transition was it like a revelation, like kind of, wow, I should have done this earlier, or was
it's
it
a good question. When I thought about the 7-string, I knew that I would get a low string and I would be able to chug in a register that 6 strings just can't deliver unless you completely restring them. So, but I did notice when I went from a 6 to 7 string, it was a different instrument. it pickles your brain a little bit, you know. But after a while, after a couple of weeks, I got used to it, and then I go back to the six string, and the six string felt really weird, like you know, it's like a little. What is this little neck, you know? And then the more I went back and forth, within probably about a month, there is no problem, you know. So now, like if I pick up a seven string, I don't feel like I'm playing a six string with an extra string. It's like a seven string, and it's
Okay.
easy to go back and forth.
Yeah. And do you have a preference of amplification?
You know, some guys, some guitar players are very knowledgeable and forensic about the gear that they use. I'm kind of a knucklehead. I know it sounds weird, but through the years, I've spent precious little time focusing because there's so many variables when you plug a guitar into an amp. There's the guitar itself, the pickups, the way you touch them, the kind of amp you're going into, and the kind of speakers. And through the years, I've gotten a little forensic with each one of those aspects. But when it comes to speakers, they change around a lot because the amplifiers change. And once the amplifiers change, it's almost like a new ball game of trying to find the right speakers that speak with the right head. But for the most part, I'm like a 30-watt greenback guy.
That's double Dutch to me. What's that mean to you?
I'm a tech guy, but not a guitar
Yeah,
tech.
those are a particular brand of speakers. They call them greenbacks because I'm not even sure of the folklore. I don't want to say anything wrong.
And that's the head unit that the actual amplification, and they make a corresponding speaker, or do you use a different?
No, through the years,
speaker?
I've gone through all sorts of different things, but probably about 5 years ago, I started working with Synergy, which was an amplifier company, and they make these modules that are preamps. So the preamp is really where all the sound is. You know, so if you when you see a guitar player plug into an amplifier, the first stage that they're plugging into is the preamp. And then the reason why it's such a big amplifier is because then it goes into the power amp that then feeds the speakers. So my system is more like there's different preamps, and then they go into one power amp. I use a Faria, and then they feed the speakers. And so the speakers may change if I change the power amp or if I change the preamp. So it's kind of a revolving thing each year. Right now, I got this on the last tour. I got this new cabinet that has 30 watts and 60 watts speakers. So it's a whole different kind of a setup. So it's constantly in flux.
Okay, that's cool.
You know, what's interesting, when I look at your discography, what I didn't expect to see on it was Spinal Tap. How is that connected to Steve Vai?
Well, Christopher Guest, who, you know, is the brilliant genius director that, you know, put together Spinal Tap and so many other great comedic genius movies. And he's also a serious guitar player. And, you know, when you love the guitar, you fetish all the magazines and the players and everything. So he knew the way I played, and we kind of kicked off a relationship. He invited me one time to perform with Tap. I unfortunately couldn't do it at that time. But then when he was making that record, he had this song called Short and Sweet, which was about 9 minutes long. Very Tap. And he asked me to if I wanted to put a solo on it. And yeah, sure. I've done that a lot. What are you up to these days, Nicko?
I'm enjoying semi-retirement, my friend. I got a little, I got a little band called Titanium Tart, which is a tribute band for Iron Maiden. It used to be a celebration of Iron Maiden's music when I was the drummer, but now I'm not anymore. So it's now a full-blown tribute band.
Oh, there you go.
So I'm doing that. I'm kind of in amongst writing an autobiography, so that's on the back burner as well.
Nice.
And I'm looking after my restaurant, and we have a 16th anniversary this year, Steve. where
You've
I
had it
live
for
here.
16 years?
It's our 16th anniversary on it would be the 2nd of December, but we're having a party. We usually have a party in the car park, and I put a tent up and a stage. You want to come and play? That would be cool. Hey, Steve, I'll fly you over from
Well, I'll be in
San Diego.
Dubai at that time, but boy, I'm gonna
Oh,
definitely
okay.
visit. Rock and roll ribs, baby.
Yeah. I'm going to get my hands back into that. Being on tour for so many years, it's hard. But how's your move going at
We're
the
doing
minute?
pretty good. It's still it's funny. We live in Encino. We've lived in Los Angeles for 45 years and in Encino for 29 years. And it was just felt like it was time to leave Los Angeles. And we've
Yeah.
always come down here to the San Diego area, Rancho Santa Fe. So right before this last tour, we went and looked at a house and I'm like, there it is. So over the past
Yeah.
2 months, I've been negotiating while on tour, and I just got back and I'm here at Rancho, and it's a move kind of a thing where then you figure out, how the hell do I do this? I've got 29 years of crap, and
Absolutely.
but we're
Absolutely.
really looking forward to it, and it's going great. Thanks.
Are you going to move your studio as well? Have you got facility?
Yeah, I have a lovely
Yeah, okay,
studio
that's great.
in Encino, but the new house has a facility that I'm going to transform into what I believe is going to be a much better studio.
Terrific. And how many beehives do you
Right
have?
now,
at
I
the
only
minute?
have one.
Oh, okay. As I know
Yes.
I know you've been a passionate beekeeper since with the conversation we had years ago. But one is better than none.
And they do all the work.
you
But
know.
once we get settled here in the new home, I'm probably going to probably have like 3 colonies.
Okay, that's lovely. Well, thank you so much, Steve. Really, I've had a great pleasure talking with you and learning a little bit about your guitar and your amps and stuff. And to me, a novice drummer, it's all double Dutch, all that.
A
But,
true
thanks
legend
for-
of our time, right there.
The inspiration that you've given to me and to millions and millions of others, and I know I speak for you, Nicko, because we've talked about it many times, is it's timeless what you've contributed, and thank you for spending the time with us together and sharing everything with
Thank you
our
guys so
audience.
much for the kind words and for thinking about me for this. And I wish you the very best with this, because it's really nice.
Thank you. God bless you, Steve, and give my love to Pia and the
Cheers.
children. We'll see you again. Bye-bye, my friend.
Wow, man, Nicko, Steve Vai, man. Woo, Jesus, what a legend. What a great guy, and so articulate, and just an amazing human. What an interview.
Yeah, really. I mean, what an amazing career. I mean, now I'm still thinking of questions I wanted to ask him. But,
They'll never stop.
it's just I wish I'd have asked him. Who's his favourite drummer he's played with? That sort of thing.
I know.
I mean, putting him on the spot somewhat, but that's that.
Well, it's a reason to invite him back, because
Yeah.
you can never have too much Vai.
There is that's brilliant. Okay, boys and girls, this is the Nicko Sicko snare drum. Back in 2010, 2011, I talked to the guys at Premier about this particular drum, and they said, well, what kind of wood do you want to use? And I went to Keith Keogh, who was the master drum builder for Premier at the time. He said, I think sycamore would look really cool. He said, we can have a vertical grain or a horizontal grain. I said, well, vertical would be nice. He said, well, you're a metal snare drum man, aren't you? I said, well, let's do this wood snare, because Premier made Signia snare drums for me way back, 2001, and I fell in love with the 5-inch. Switched out. Sometimes I still use the Beast, but my Ludwig Supraphonic. But they made this special for me, and they called it a Nicko Sicko. It's spelled Syco. It's not like Sicko. like I thought it should have been. But I think it's a 12 ply. Let's have a quick peek on the bottom. Yep, I think so. It's either 10 or 12. So it's a nice, thick, strong shell. 45-degree bearing edge. We got 10 lugs across the top and the bottom, and the old Premier wonderful throw off that they came up with. Nice. And so anyway, they put this into production in 2013 for me. We had it was just generally on sale for folks to go out and buy. So it's sycamore wood. And as you can see, it's got a vertical grain to it. Beautiful piece of wood. This is it. This is my signature snare drum that the Premier Drum Company made for me. Very happy with it. It was a beautiful... Oh, by the way, I used this on the Maiden England tour in 2013, 14 and 15. It went over a couple of years, which was really cool. So very lovely snare. If you check out the video, any of the videos from Maiden England, this is what you'll be hearing. So I'd like to introduce you to this Future Past drum. As you see, we got Senjutsu Eddie. Each one of the drums had a different Eddie posed, but he was basically from the album, Senjutsu album. The artwork on each drum was a different pose of this guy, this Eddie. Let's get to the wear and tear, the care part. If you notice on this, this is my 12-inch tom-tom. So if you imagine my kit, I've got 13 and 14 on the mounted on the bass drum. The 12 lived up here. What we needed to do was, because the drum was very, very close, the way up my tolerances, so I would have the rim of the 13-inch drum very close to this shell. And to save it and protect the shell against damage and rub and wear and tear, would put this sponge surrounded by gaffer tape to protect it. The idea is that, you know, it's going to look after the shell and basically it won't look bad if it's all scraped up. Like what can happen, for instance, when you have your snare drum and you're moving it around every night in and out of gigs and whatnot, and you've got your whatever 12, 13, 10 tom-tom on the bass drum, and it knocks it and it gouges out. And it's horrible. We've all seen it. And if your drums are looking like that, shame on you. You know, put something on it to protect the finish of the drum. It doesn't change the distance that you're going to have, because it's a bit of sponge in there. So, you know, it's going to stop the contact of the shell and damaging it. And that's primarily for your snare drum, hitting the you know, your tom in front of it. But anyway, that's my wear, tear and care section of the day. Hello boys and girls, yes, it's Nicko and David with you. We are going to have Nicko's bedtime stories from this beautiful publication, Infinite Dreams from Iron Maiden. And I'd just like to make a shout out to the wonderful Ben Smallwood, who's Rod's son, for putting this wonderful publication together. It's absolutely fantastic.
Oh, it's so great.
And we're going to share some stories. So what do you think we should read tonight?
Well, let's see. How about page 33, Rod of Iron?
Absolutely.
About the man himself, Rod Smallwood.
Oh, bloody great. Okay. I was given this demo by my best mate at London's Rosalind Park, where I used to play rugby, said Rod. Andy Waller worked with Steve, who was a draftsman in his surveying office. He said, "Hey, mate of mine at work has a band. Will you give it a listen?" I played it, and it was something special. But the next day, I went off on a rugby tour of California. So nothing much happened immediately. But when I got back, I called Steve. He said he had a show in the East End coming up. I told him I would arrange a couple of West End London pub shows instead, and advised him that the band should spread their wings a bit.
Rod, using an agent, arranged a gig at the Windsor Castle on Harrow Road, London, W9. At the gig, Steve argued with the agent, who wanted them to go on early before their 30 or so fans had arrived from the East End. Typically, Steve refused to go on before they got there. The agent told the band that he would get them banned from North London, so Steve told him what to do with his gig. But Rod got to meet Steve and was impressed by his attitude and booked them a gig at the Swan Hammersmith. Ominously, Paul Di'Anno was arrested for carrying a knife about 15 minutes before he was due to take the stage. he protested that he used the knife in his day job, which was reconditioning oil drums. Now, for more on this great story of Rod of Iron, you'll have to check out Infinite Dreams by Iron Maiden.
Infinite Dreams by Iron Maiden. Watch this space.
Metal sticks!